microscopic pictogram.
Don't call me Johnny Bones anymore. Call me Johnny Meat. I'm Johnny Meat, baby.
Okay, well, let's hear it. Treat yourself a round of sausage. No, I'm sorry, that's not it.
Everything you ever wanted is waiting for you on the other side of your comfort zone. Get after it.
Episode 195, boys, let's go. The MSG card is finally here. Can you believe it? John Jones is actually fighting this weekend. Never thought that that day would come. I'm straight from the ice cooler. Meat is obviously chilling on the beach. He had a much better week than I did last week, but not too much to recap from last week. The MEATLOCK missed. Semi the Jedi is truly awful and on the never again MEATLOCK list, but Ricky Tercios was supposed to fight. That fight got canceled. Nothing really to talk about, Meatball. I do kind of want to talk about the main event, though. We both were all over Carlos Prates. I went 1-3. You went 2-2. It's the only one that we both got together. But Carlos Prates, easy light work, first round finish over Neil Magny. Magny's been finished in the first round 2 straight fights now. We know the nerds are that sick. Carlos Prates, what'd you make out of it?
Yeah, Carlos Prates is no joke. People are saying, Neil took a dive. No, that's just how hard Prates hits. I mean, if he grazes you, you are going to sleep. The fighting nerds are no joke.
Yeah, the fighting nerds are no joke, and the fact that, that final punch didn't even seem like it landed that cleanly on Neil Magny, but the accumulation of strikes that he had landed before that was simply incredible, and just another easy light work finish for the fighting nerds. So, again, not a lot from UFC Vegas 100. Should we just jump straight into MSG? I mean, this card's absolutely stacked.
Yeah, this card is so stacked, and yeah, let's just get into the MEATLOCK.
Swap us through then. It is our boy Maniac McGhee taking on Jonathan Martinez. And the last time we saw Jonathan Martinez fight, we actually had him as a MEATLOCK. So we have him on the flip side of this one. We love Maniac McGhee to keep the win streak alive. He's fighting out of Arizona and is a guy who just keeps getting better and better. I mean, he's undefeated in the UFC, taking a nice 3-0 record into this contest against Martinez. Although this is quite a levels test, right? I mean, the wins that he's picked up to date are against Journey Newsom, pretty bad. JP Bays, even worse. And Gaston Bolaños, who did pick up a beautiful finish last week, but you wonder how good he is. So meeting a guy like Jonathan Martinez, who you and I were pretty high on at one point, suddenly we've soured. And that fight against Jose Waldo was just really enough for us to be convinced that Jonathan Martinez does not have that it factor. And when these two guys meet in a prelim headlining spot, it's going to be a lot of eyes on both these guys, and we think that McGhee is just kind of mentally built a little bit different. So what are your thoughts on this one against Jonathan Martinez? How do you think he gets this one done over the Dragon, and is it early and often?
Yeah, I think this one is going to be early and often. I mean, Jonathan Martinez kind of, crapped the bag his last fight versus, Jose Waldo. When I feel like McGhee would absolutely ragdoll and take advantage of this opportunity versus, an absolute vet and legend. And I think he would win that fight. And so in this fight, this is a good levels test for him, but I think he's just going to put him on the map on like where McGhee is no freaking joke. I think he's going to put an insane pace. His striking is crisp and his grappling is even more deadlier. So wherever that goes in the fight, he's going to dominate. And I think it's going to be early and often.
Yeah, his striking is crisp. He has the wrestling to go with it as well, and he has seemingly the gas tank, right? I mean, he's a guy who hasn't even gone the distance yet. Every time he wins, he is picking up finish after finish, but just seems like he's one of those CEO type dudes who can go for 10 rounds, even if we haven't yet seen it. So in this one, I mean, Jose Aldo was unable to finish Martinez, but it was a pretty dominant affair across all 3 rounds. Do you see our boy McGhee picking up another finish, continuing his finish streak, or any chance this does go the distance? And if so, can you see our boy McGhee winning a decision if he's unable to pick up that finish against the Dragon?
Yeah, he could definitely pick up a decision if it does go distance, but I don't know. He's a finisher, he's a winner, and I think he's gonna not put it in the judge's hands and take this one home.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it is a levels test, right? I mean, Maniac McGhee, to date, while he has looked extremely impressive, has not fought a guy with the experience and with the resume as Jonathan Martinez. We just think that McGhee is on the way up, whereas Jonathan Martinez might be on the way down. So it's a fight that Tapology is seeing differently. I mean, the odds are pretty close. McGhee is a slight favorite, around minus 130, but Tapology's slightly faded the Meat Boys. 54% is going with the Dragon. 46% is going with Maniac McGhee, and majority is Brown for that finish. So, are you at all surprised by the Tapology casuals that heavy on Dragon? I mean, did they not see that fight against Waldo?
Yeah, they must have faded that fight, to be honest. That's the only thing I can imagine. But because it is kind of surprising to see on how many casuals are going with the Dragon versus McGhee. McGee's been looking absolutely phenomenal, looking better than ever, and I think it's gonna be very truly unfortunate for all these casual fake Dragon fake fans.
Yeah, great point. And like we've discussed many times before, there really is only one dragon. His name is Lyoto Machida. It's definitely not Jonathan Martinez. So we're taking McGhee for this easy light work meatlock. The Marcus McGhee like to reference it as, and we're going to keep it simple, throwing down an easy 130. It'll net us 100, get us our 110th meatlock, get us back on track from the the fumble Jedi disaster of last weekend. But we like our boy McGhee to capitalize on this prelim headlining spot. So officially, I'll go McGhee, but I'm going to go McGhee by decision. I do see a world where Jonathan is able to survive, and perhaps this is one of those fights where McGhee showcases to everyone that he's not just a YOLO finisher. He's a guy that can dominate you across 15 minutes as well, and that's the kind of fight I'm envisioning for our boy Marcus McGhee. So Marcus McGhee by decision is my call. You got McGhee by finish?
Yeah, I'm definitely picking McGee by finish. I think it's gonna be early enough, and honestly, I could see a sub first round. I mean, crap, I could even see a knockout, to be honest.
First round sub or KO for meat. Either way, it's a meat lock. You see the text. So swap us through and let us know in the comments if you are agree with the Marcus McGhee meat lock or if you're taking Fumble Martinez. Swap us through the meat lock because this one is fun. It's Oban Elliott, the Welsh gangster, taking on Basil Half-Ass, your boy, who is 1-1 in the UFC. He made that debut on short notice, like 3 days essentially, and basically beat Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, officially he lost a split decision, but those of us who had any sort of coin on Jack Dello were very happy to escape with the victory in that one because it was pretty close and one that many thought Basil did enough to win, but he was able to rebound with a dominant performance over Mickey Gall a few months later, and I believe we might have meatlocked him in that one because that was a no-brainer, but he's taking on Oban Elliott, the Welsh gangster, who himself is 2-0 in the UFC. He's 11-2 overall, and he's a guy coming from the Contender Series with a lot of hype. I mean, even the version that we saw on the Contenders, because this is a dude, Oban Elliott, who has noticeably improved, and that version we saw against Preston Parsons most recently was a very dominant version of Oban Elliott. So in this one, I mean, you've been very bullish on Basil Half-Ass. This is a guy who trains with your boy Pfeiffer, Petrosky, all those killers in Philly, Sean Brady. Is Basil Half-Ass as a pretty decent dog going to be too much for Oban Elliott, or is the Welsh gangster that good and Basil Half-Ass basically peaked against Jack Della and will never win again?
That's a good question. Did he peak? Did he not? I don't know. I just know that Basil, you know, he's definitely smoking this guy. That is a fact. This guy isn't even the same realm as Basil. The odds makers are crazy. I mean, Basil is a like 8th degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. This is gonna hit the mat and be an easy submission. It won't even be close.
Yeah, and I mean, if you call that correctly, then kudos to you because we know that Oban Elliott is a guy who doesn't get submitted often, right? In fact, he's never been submitted. He got slept by Madars Flamines, but that was by punches. And besides that, he hasn't lost any fights. So if he is to drop a sub to your boy Basil, then that'd be a great call. And you're definitely getting juicy odds if you predict it because this is a fight where Basil Half-Ass was a plus 125 dog to open. Minus 155 was Oban Elliott. And now you check the numbers. Oban is minus 285 to Basil's plus 230. So basically, all the action is coming in on Oban Elliott. That's enough to keep me away personally. I mean, I liked Oban at that minus 155 opening line, but minus 300-ish for Oban Elliott seems pretty expensive. Are you at all surprised with all of the action on Oban Elliott? I mean, sounds like you're pretty bullish on Basil Half-Ass. So what do you make of the dramatic odds movements, and why do you think all the action's coming in on the Welsh gangster?
I think Welsh Gangster has, had some good performances, been a little more in the eyesight of the casuals and the fans. While, Half-Ass, he's kind of like a dark horse. Like I think people don't even remember that he fought Jack Della. Even in the hardcores, I bet you that you told them that, like, what are you talking about? I think people kind of forgot about that, and they forgot how that fight went. I just know Jack Dilla would smash this guy. If he would smash this guy, well, of course, half-ass would too. So this is going to be honestly a one-side mauling, and I mean, those submission odds are probably pretty juicy, and I will definitely be eyeing those up.
Yeah, good stuff. They're going to be juicy indeed. And you're right. I mean, that fight against Mickey Gall was kind of buried in the prelim, so it's possible that a lot of people just forgot about Basil Halfass and that performance he had against Jack Della. But in this one, Meat Boy, Tapology is overwhelmingly taking the Welsh Gangster. 73% is going with Oban. 27% is going with Halfass. It's basically beige on both sides, so they think that decision is most likely. I'm taking Oban Elliott in this one, and I'm taking Oban Elliott to get a finish over your boy Halfass. All the money is on the decision, so Oban, as a guy who is 2-0 in the UFC and has gotten 2 dominant decisions, I think in this opportunity we'll be looking for a statement finish. And against a guy like Basil Halfass, who has been finished before, I think that he has a little bit of life to get finished again. So I'm going to go Oban by second round KO. I think your boy's getting slept. Am I tripping?
Honestly, I would love to say no. I don't think you're tripping, but this one you are tripping. I mean, he trains with body bags. Sean Scrady. I mean, you name it, he trains with him. This guy is a future champ, and this weekend we will find out.
Yeah, not to be confused with Sean Strickland. Sean Scrady is a true competitor and a true training partner nonetheless. But I take your points. They are well received, Meat Boy. And I've been sleeping on Basil Halfass this whole time, right? I slept on him against Jack Della, so got to continue that trend. Oban, sleeps, your boy Basil. But let us know in the comments, are you taking Oban Elliott? Do you like the odds? Or are you with Meat Boy and you think Basil Halfass gets this one done? But swap us through Meat Boy because it's a Meat Boy classic, a Meat Boy favorite. One of our boys, it's our Polish brother, Marcin Tiboro, who is taking on Jonata Denise, who was supposed to fight 2 weeks ago against the Black Beast. Black Beast doesn't show up to the ceremonial weigh-ins. Brendan Fitzgerald gets on the mic and says, Black Beast is not here tonight at the ceremonials, but he'll be here tomorrow to fight Denise. And then when tomorrow arrived, he was not there to fight Denise. So the UFC pushes back Jonata Denise, gets him another ranked opponent in Marcin Tibura, and this time his opponent is, a little bit different of a fighter than the Black Beast. I mean, we can envision Denise at first Black Beast being 2 dudes throwing down, swinging absolute YOLOs, but our boy Tibura is a much more measured and strategic fighter and one who is not afraid to mix in the grappling. So in this fight against Denise, who is clearly one-dimensional, clearly is there to strike, is he in for a long night against Marcin Tibura, who is basically the definition of well-roundedness? And if so, is Tibura getting back to his finishing ways like he did against Tuivasa?
Yeah, I mean, if he's taking out Shui, he's probably taking out this bum. Tybura is arguably even a lock in this. I just see such an easy win, a path to victory for him. It's clear. Survive the first round or take him down in the first round, smother him, gas him out, and let the 2-pump chomp get smothered and tap from exhaustion. I honestly think Tybura won't even have to actually do a submission. I think he could literally gas him out because if there's anything the longer the fight goes, Tybura can only excel. He's got the weird infinite gas tank, his great grappling, and this is going to be a very fun fight, and I can't wait to see the Polish brother get another dub.
Yeah, great points. I mean, Tibura's won 3 of his last 5 fights, right? And the 2 fights that he lost, he was asleep within the first 2 minutes, right? Tom Aspinall absolutely slept him. Spivak, I guess, didn't put him to sleep, but was able to tap him out in 1 minute and 44 seconds. So it's not like Tibura is out there losing recent decisions. He's just losing early and often. So against a guy like Denise, who, while yes, one of his UFC victories was an early and often finish, that was against Austin Lane, and most guys are able to finish Austin Lane early and often. So you wonder how much stock to put in that. And that fight against Carl Williams, most recently from Jonata Denise, was kind of fake close, and Carl Williams even rocked Denise at one point. And we know how good Carl Williams is, and he's not very good, right? He already just got cut most recently. So you wonder what a fight against our boy Tibura looks like. Normally we MEATLOCK Tibura, right? Anytime we see Tibura as basically pick'em value or sometimes dog lock juicy odds value, we're all over the MEATLOCK. In this one, though, we're not meatlocking him, and Tibura just lost to Sergey Spivak. So is there any chance that, just to provide a sort of counter perspective, is there any chance that Tibura at 40 years old, having just spoiled a meatlock a few months ago, goes out and just gets slept by this hype beast and basically retires to PFL?
I really hope that does not happen because Tib is the man. But absolutely, I mean, Tybura is getting older. These are heavyweights, so all it takes is one touch of the glove and you go to sleep. I just gotta imagine that Tybura is gonna do the classic Tybura move. He probably gets knocked out. He probably bleeding everywhere. The guy gasses out trying to finish him, fails miserably. Tybura gets on top, recovers, smashes, or gets a submission. That's just the classic Tib way. He's like the GM3 of the heavyweights, but a little better. So I kind of see that being kind of the path to victory if Tybura fails at the game plan of just grapple and survive. But yeah, he can absolutely get knocked out. He's getting older. He's been knocked out before. I just don't think this guy's fighting is that good. The odds say agree with me on this one also.
Yeah, fair points. I like the comparison. Tibura is very much like the heavyweight GM3 for sure. Because I mean, that fight against Greg Hardy, there's been a lot of fights where he was basically dead to rights, one punch away from getting slept, but found a way to survive, and then was able to either get a decision or get a finish of his own as a result. So perhaps the first 2-3 minutes are a little bit dangerous. Tibura eats some shots, but as soon as Tibura eats that really heavy shot, I think it's going to wake him up. He's going to shoot for a single leg, and once Denise is on the mat and T-Burrow's on top of him, it should be dead to rights Denise for sure. So even though Tapology is overwhelmingly bullish on Denise, 64% is taking Janata, only 36% is going with T-Burr, and basically all of it is brown for the Denise KO. I'm with you, of course. I would never fade T-Burr. I mean, it seems like T-Burr is the type of fighter who, as soon as we pick some hype beast or pick anyone against him, T-Burr is going to get a dominant finish or just put on a dominant performance. So even though he spoiled a meatlock most recently, he's still our boy. It's the OG meatlock. Can't fade T-Burra. I'll go T-Burra by finish. Second round submission officially is what I will go with. Are you taking KO, submission, or maybe even a decision for T-Burra?
Yeah, I like that second round submission. Maybe the guy survives the first, but doubt the second, and there's no way the third. The longer the fight goes, like we said, Tybura just gets better and better.
Yeah, this ain't Austin Lane. This is Marcin Tibura, and even at 40 years old, we struggle to see Denise being able to take him out. So let us know if you agree. If Tibura, we missed an obvious meatlock, or if he's just going to sneak a dub out in this one. But swap us through, Meat Boy, because this is another fun one. I mean, obviously it's UFC 309. This entire fight card is stacked, and if you've already made it halfway, appreciate it. Head down to the comments if you're looking for a specific breakdown. But nonetheless, it's the Leech Damon Jackson taking on A10 Jim Miller, who is 37-18-1, has all sorts of UFC records, and is a guy who just got absolutely smoked by Bobby Green when he fought earlier this year in April. But prior to that, he had won 5 of 6. He was on a 2-fight finishing streak and was picking up back-to-back performance of the night. So even though Jim Miller is 40 years old and some might argue is on his way out, I mean, he clearly still has a lot left, but the odds makers are not bullish on him. They are taking Damon Jackson, who has lost 3 of 4, and his only recent win was a split decision over Alexander the Great Ape Hernandez. So what do you make in this one of the odds? Do you think that Damon Jackson is that much better than even a 40-year-old Jim Miller, enough to where a minus 180 price tag makes sense? Or at plus 150, is A10 juicy beef for Jim Miller?
Yeah, that's a great question. Man, I don't know. It's very tough because I don't know why my gut's saying Jim Miller is gonna pull one to the sunset and retire, and this is a good matchup. This is a winnable fight for him, but Damon Jackson, he's a little bit younger. His style is pretty darn good for Jim Miller to where I think Damon's just going to get this one done. I could even see maybe Damon getting a submission, a sneaky submission, or a sneaky KO. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, and Jim just uses that dad bod of his and just overpowers him like he did previously before Bobby Green. But I gotta imagine that Damon Jackson's gonna have a little more, you know, giddy up to his skip and might get a knockout or submission in this one.
Yeah, great points. I think one thing that I want to touch on is, when Damon Jackson has had all of this recent success, it's been at featherweight, right? I mean, this is a guy who was the interim LFA featherweight champ before rejoining the promotion, and since rejoining the UFC, these are his only losses: Ilya Topuria, Dan Ige, Billy Q, which hasn't aged nicely, and then most recently against Chepe Mariscal. So those are all pretty tough fighters, minus Billy Q. However, they were all at minus 145, and early in his career is when he fought at lightweight, but he hasn't fought at lightweight since about 2017, and this fight against Jim Miller is at lightweight. It's at 155, so Damon Jackson had missed weight in 2 straight fights, right? That fight against Alex Hernandez, he missed by 1.5 pounds. The fight against Chepe Mariscal, he missed by almost 4 pounds, so the writing was on the wall for a jump up into a new weight division, obviously, but is Jim Miller like too much of a grizzled OG lightweight and there might be a noticeable strength difference in this fight? Or do you see Damon Jackson as, at this point in his career, at his size, being able to, I guess, seamlessly transition back into lightweight?
Yeah, that's where, it makes you wonder with the Jim Miller dad bod, can he get it done? Can he overpower him? Because that's what it seems like he does a lot of these guys. It's like always surprised. It's like, dang, this guy's 40 and he's still ragdolling dudes. I don't know. I think Damon Jackson is gonna have that upper edge though with the age. Also, with him not having to cut weight, he should be significantly stronger, and he should be, ideally he should be way better because less cut, less water out of the brain. He should be dialed, and he should be pretty darn strong if he was couldn't make weight for 145. So this should be a pretty even matchup, but maybe I'm wrong. And King Dad Bod, Dad Strength comes in and just destroys Damon Jackson. It wouldn't surprise me, but I gotta go with Damon on this one just for stylistic matchups.
Yeah, great points. Well received. Is it the dad bod or is Damon Jackson with no weight cut going to be peak leech at 36 years of age? This one is definitely fascinating to me because I guess what I keep coming back to is I wonder if Damon Jackson was just an oversized 145er who was having a lot of success down there because he was bigger, he was stronger, but he was cutting a lot of weight to get down there. So now when he's at 155, is he like a Kevin Lee at 170 type character where all the advantages he had in that lower weight class are suddenly gone when it's against the bigger guys at lightweight? I guess Jim Miller's a great test because we're talking Jim Miller. I mean, he used to fight at 145 as well. It's not like Jim Miller is Islam or Arman Sarukian out there, right? I mean, he's a pretty normal sized lightweight, but this one is interesting for me, Meatball. I've been kind of going back and forth. The odds had the Leech at a minus 130 favorite, but they've since swelled to about minus 180. However, Tapology is pretty bullish on a 10. 64% going Jim Miller, only 36% going with the Leech, and a lot of beige on both sides. So, are you at all surprised, one, that all the Tapology backers, or at least 2/3 of them, are backing Jim Miller? And are you surprised by all of the beige for decision? I mean, do you see a world where this fight goes the distance?
I would be very surprised if this fight goes the distance, to be honest, but like maybe? I don't know. I just see Jim Miller getting a classic Jim Miller finish or Damon Jackson getting something super slick and maybe even a brutal sad. It's like, oh no, not like this, Jim. You got knocked out terribly, like a Frankie Edgar exit. That I would hate to see. But yeah, I just don't see this going the distance. This is gonna be a firefight. Both these guys put on an absolute insane pace, and it's gonna end with a bang.
Yeah, I hope it's not brutal. I hope it's not sad. I mean, Jim Miller's fighting in front of his hometown crowd, and perhaps this is the time where Jim Miller gets a W and finally hangs them up. But Jim Miller seemingly is a dude who will never retire, and he's a guy who we're never really pushing to retire. I mean, usually when these guys get, eclipse their 40s, we're kind of like, all right, let's at what point are they going to hang him up? But Jim Miller's still always in every fight. I mean, he may not always win every fight, and that fight against Bobby Green most recently, he definitely did not win that fight. He got kind of destroyed, but we still are always down to see him fight again. So hopefully it's not a sad ending. I'm taking Jim Miller in this one. I don't necessarily love the pick because I do like the Leech a lot, especially at 145, but something tells me that he's not going to have those same advantages in this division, and as a result, I'm going to buy the hype. I'm going to buy the story. I'm going to buy the dog in Jim Miller, and I'm going to take Jim Miller to get a decision in this one with a lot of wrestling, a lot of control time, and not a lot of finishing opportunities, but instead a lot of hold you down opportunities. So I'm taking Jim Miller by decision. You have Leach by.
I'm gonna take Leach by KO.
Leach by KO. Meat says Jim Miller's getting slept. Let us know in the comments if you agree with that one, or if you're buying the hype, you're buying the story and taking A10 Miller. Swap us through though, Meat Boy, because we've hit the main card. And the first fight to kick off this UFC 309 main card is another fighting nerd. I mean, it seems like the UFC is entrusting these guys with a lot of roles. I mean, we saw Carlos Pratas last weekend essentially carry the mantle of a very weak card and steal the show as it was designed to do. So in this one, we got another nerd opening up the main card, and James Yontop is the dog of a replacement who is taking on Mauricio Rufy, who is an absolute hype beast. He's coming in having just easily smoked Jamie Malarkey, first round finish, and that was his UFC debut. He essentially validated why this guy has so much hype and why so many people believe that the Fighting Nerds is currently the best team in the world. But he's taking on Yontop, who was another Contender Series guy and is stepping in on short notice. I mean, if we remember, our boy Rufy was supposed to be fighting Charlie Campbell. Campbell pulls out. They call up Yontop, who hasn't yet won in the UFC, but he did just fight to a split decision loss against Slava Claus in a fight where he could have quit early. He didn't. He demonstrated his heart. He demonstrated his toughness, and a judge even awarded him the victory. But he was on the wrong end of the split, and he'll be looking for his first UFC win in this fight against probably one of the most hyped up fighters on the roster. So any chance that the Peruvian fighter James Yontop shocks the world and is able to sleep Rufy, or is Rufy going to just absolutely sleep this guy?
Yeah, no, I think the Fighting Nerds are no joke, and this is just gonna, you know, put another, W slash acolyte into this team where this might be the dream team of 2024 and for sure 2025. As long as this guy doesn't fumble, this guy's no joke. Uh, Probably gonna win in spectacular fashion. Look at the odds; that kind of says it all, and everyone kind of agrees. But yeah, this is gonna be a fun fight nonetheless.
Yeah, the odds are what they are. Tapology obviously overwhelmingly is picking Rufy. 97% is taking Mauricio to smoke the Peruvian fighter Yontop in this one. Only 3%, his friends and family, are going with James Yontop. If you're taking Rufy, obviously you are. Is this a patented meat under 60-second banger, or any chance that James survives the first minute, maybe even the first round? Or is it early and often?
Yeah, it's early and often for sure. First 60 seconds, maybe, but man, I definitely first round. That's a given in my opinion. But it would not surprise me if he does another 60-second, absolute slobber.
Yeah, and Goku did get finished in the first round by Chris Padilla in his UFC debut. It lasted 4.5 minutes, so not necessarily 60 seconds, but we have seen Padilla lose fights early. However, when he does, he's usually getting submitted. So if he is getting slept early and often in this one by Rufy, then it would be his first KO defeat, and I kind of think that that's where this fight is going. I mean, until I see, first of all, a fighting nerd lose a fight, I'm not going to pick against them, and until I see a fighting nerd not pick up a finish, then I'm going to assume that another finish they will achieve. So I'm taking Rufy in this one by first round KO. I think that Yontop, got to respect the dude for stepping up on short notice, especially against a dude with as much hype as Rufy, but doesn't seem like this is a winnable opportunity for him. And while you can respect the move, you can acknowledge he's probably also getting slept. So I'm going first round KO by Rufy. Any last thoughts on that one?
No, 100% agree. That is it's gonna be a fun fight, a spectacular knockout. Can't wait for this one.
Yeah, let us know if you're clenching it up. Maybe you're going to take that plus money 1.5 over, and hope that Goku can survive. But we tend to think that that's not happening. So swap us through, Meat Boy. A couple to go. Another absolute hype beast. I mean, you would say that Rufy has the most hype on the card, but that would kind of be neglecting the guy who probably has the most hype in the UFC in general. It's Bo Nickel, right? Taking his undefeated 6-0 record against the Bear Jew, who at 17-8-1. I mean, it's been pretty rough for the Bear Jew lately, right? He's lost 4 of 5. His only win was a beautiful finish against Andre Muniz, and that actually was in his middleweight debut. So people thought that, Bear Jew found his correct weight class. Perhaps he is the maybe not next champ at 185, but could be a couple fights away, or maybe even a contender in the division. But he ran into Brendan Allen, got absolutely smoked. And then he ran into often mentioned fighting nerd Kyle Bahalio, got smoked in that one as well. So he's taken a step back as far as like proven guys in the division are concerned. And now they're saying, okay, Paul Craig, go be the gatekeeper, the levels test that historically you were, and historically you've had some success in. So in this one against Bo Nickel, who, I mean, Bo Nickel's best win is Cody Brundage, right? He beat him in the second round at UFC 300. That was about 5 months ago, and the 2 wins before that were against Val Woodburn, awful, and Jamie the Nightwolf Pickett, even worse. So in this fight against the Bear Jew, Paul Craig, any chance at plus 700 that Paul Craig has some life and Bo Nickel might not be ready for this level, or is Bo Nickel easily ready for Bear Jew and he's going to justify the minus 1100 price tag that he's carrying?
Yeah, I mean, uh, obviously Bo Nickel probably smashes Barraju. Easy, light work. But there's always a chance. And these odds are so crazy, you best believe I'm fading Bo. I'm not even going to touch that. It just makes no sense because if the Bearju can make Mago meat tap, I would imagine he can make Bo nickel tap, right? So Bearju's probably gets ragdolled first round, but the longer the fight goes, the better the odds are for Bearju. Does a Bearju classic, gets beaten up, 1 minute left, and breaks an arm. So yeah, would not surprise me if Bearju gets the craziest upset ever, but most likely Bo Nickel wins. I'm gonna go via KO.
Yeah, it's very crazy how things can change, right? Because if you just look at the wins and losses, I mean, Bearju, this is a guy who, as you mentioned, has a finish over Magomedov, who has never lost another fight beyond that one. He has a finish over Jamal Hill, who became the 205 champ. He has a finish over Nikita Krylov, who is a top contender at 205 as well. I mean, the Bearju has all these amazing finishes, and yet we're taking Bo Nickel, and Bo Nickel is minus 1100, despite being a 6-0 unproven middleweight against this former 205er. So very crazy how matchups can go, but Tapology obviously overwhelmingly is taking Bo Nickel. 91% is going with the Penn State wrestler, and only 9% is going with the Barraju. It's basically all copper, so those who are taking the Barraju think that a submission is most likely. Do you agree that Paul Craig's only pathway will be by submission, and are you at all surprised that all these nickel backers are taking him by KO, or do you really think that Paul Craig is going to go and get slept by Bo Nickel?
Yeah, I honestly think Paul Craig is going to get slept by Bo Nickel. Um, I think it's going to be an early and often too, also. But I don't know. With these odds, I might just throw $100 on Paul Craig and just YOLO submission and get paid out a crap load of money because if he could do it to Magomed, he can do it to anybody. But I don't know. This is such a funny fight to me where it's like ultimate X Factor, worst fighter ever, maybe wins versus the future champ, future GOAT, and he might actually lose via submission, which is hilarious. But yeah, Bo Nickel probably wins KO first round.
Bo Nickel probably wins for sure. I want to pick Bearju so bad. I want him to get this one done. I want him to succumb to a takedown early in the fight and just throw up one of those patented triangles with the flexible hips that he has and finds a way to tap out Bo Nickel in a squeeze that Nickel has never felt before. But I do think that it's going to be very difficult for the Bearju to get this one done. First of all, because if this fight somehow goes the distance, in what world do the judges not give the fight to Bo Nickel? I mean, he's basically like the Paddy Pimblett, another Paddy Pimblett type character where as long as he doesn't get finished, then the judges will probably figure out a way to get him the W, even if the rounds are close. And if we're just picking pathways and Paul Craig's only pathway is that YOLO sub, which obviously always has life. I mean, I feel like the Paul Craig YOLO sub is somewhat comparable to the Black Beast YOLO KO. I mean, at any second of the fight, he can whip it out. Just don't know if it's happening this time against Bo Nickel, who you got to imagine has been in every single position. This is a dude who grew up on the mats, and while yes, it was partaking in different sports, a lot of the skills will translate, and a lot of the positions should as well. So I'll take Bo Nickel. I'm going to take Bo Nickel, however, by decision. I see a world where Paul Craig survives. Bo Nickel isn't as impressive on the feet as he is, or was, I should say, in his recent fights, simply because those opponents that Bo Nickel fought most recently were just not good fighters, whereas Paul Craig is actually an established fighter in the UFC. So I'll take Bo Nickel by decision, but every single part of my entity wants to pick the Bear Jew by submission, and when push comes to shove, Meat Boy, I might be joining you on a YOLO dink of a Bear Jew sub, because it always has life, eh?
Yeah, no, it always has life with Bear Jew. That is a fact. And this should be a fun fight, a great fight nonetheless.
And the Bear Jew says that he is getting this one done and not to write off the old dog. So let us know in the comments if you're buying the Bear Jew hype or if you are taking the homie, the Penn State wrestler Bo Nickel, to get this one done. But speaking of another dude, it's the co-meat who is bringing all the hype, is essentially carrying the promotional load like he often does. It's Iron Michael Chandler who is finally fighting, right? He's taking on Oliveira, aka Do Bronx, in what was a rematch of a title fight just a few years back. And it's obviously been a while since we've seen Michael Chandler. He was supposed to be fighting Conor McGregor many times, but he managed to keep holding out faith that that fight would go down, despite everyone else knowing that Conor was basically never going to show up to that fight and was loving all the free promotion that came with it. But nonetheless, Chandler's been shelved, and you can see him in Embedded. You can see him in UFC Countdown. I mean, the dude is absolutely shredded. He's dialed. He seems like he's ready to go and ready to, what in his mind, rectify that last fight against Oliveira, where he essentially had Oliveira dead to rights. Charles was almost finished, but Charles gets saved by the bell, and Chandler comes out in round two, amped up, juiced up, ready to get the finish that he was so close to getting minutes prior, and as a result left himself exposed and got finished himself. So it was a beautiful comeback victory for Do Bronx, and it was a fight where if he hadn't already shed the quitter label, then Oliveira absolutely did in that fight, because it looked bad, and then minutes later he was getting it done. So in this rematch, are you buying the hype that Michael Chandler is selling? I mean, this dude is locked in. All this guy does is train, spend time with his family, train, spend time with his family. Seems like he does two activities. Oliveira, meanwhile, is doing all sorts of stuff. He's on the world tour. He is navigating the horse race business and trying to breed stallions to compete at a high level. So is Oliveira a little bit too distracted and he's taken on a one-track minded missile of a guy in Michael Chandler? Or is even an Oliveira who isn't quite as dialed still a better fighter than Michael Chandler?
You know, he beat him once, he'll beat him again. I think Oliveira is going to KO or submit him. Honestly, I can see it being similar. Michael Chandler hits him with an absolute bomb from another dimension. Oliveira's eyes disappear, and he hits the ground, and then they reappear, and then he probably gets a knee bar for the win. That's kind of how I see this going. That's kind of how every Oliveira fight goes. Oliveira is no joke. Somehow he gets knocked out, but then gets the win every time. So I think this is going to go one way, and it's exactly the way it went the first time.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Knee, knee bar is crazy. Oliveira by knee bar is hilarious. I hope that that goes down, because if Michael Chandler, all this hype, all this talk, all this enthusiasm goes out and loses to a knee bar in the co-meet, that would be classic for sure. But nonetheless, the last time we saw Oliveira, I mean, this dude just lost as well. He dropped a close split decision to Arman Sarukian, but it was a fight where 70% of the media members thought Arman won, but 30% did take Oliveira to get that one done, and the fight before that, he took out Beneil Dariush and lost to Islam before that. So this is a guy in Charles who also has lost two of three, but Chandler has lost four of five, and his only recent win is against Tony Ferguson in a fight where he lost the first round, but then second round landed that YOLO up kick. So Michael Chandler is obviously a fun fan favorite fighter. I mean, everyone loves Iron Michael Chandler. And I actually am sort of buying the hype in this one. So give me one last pitch as to why you think Oliveira gets this one done. Is it going to be the submission ultimately? Is it going to be that knee bar? Or give me your final pitch.
Yeah, I just think Oliveira is just a more diverse fighter, while Michael Chandler probably could win a title. Well, not anymore because Islam, but probably could have beaten basically all the fighters he's lost to. But what he does is he fights their game and he goes chaos. He brings chaos, and the other guys, they kind of bring the chaos, but they're also more methodical. They're more game plan orientated, and they just wait for the better opportunity while Michael Chandler's just swinging for the fences, trying to get a Dan Hooker ultimate meat bomb. And I just think the reach, the teep kicks, the striking of Oliveira is going to be too much for Michael Chandler, and I just don't see Michael Chandler trying to wrestle. But like if he wrestled, he would have a way better chance of beating Oliveira. But then again, like, do you really want to go to the ground with Oliveira? Like Oliveira might be the best and scariest person to be on bottom or on top beyond Islam Makhachev. So just a matchup stylistic wise, Michael Chandler has to go for the fences, which is going to lead opportunity to Oliveira just doing a classic Oliveira move where he knocks out every guy he fights, from Dustin Poirier to Michael Chandler. He only fake loses to, heavy wrestlers that have good enough strength, like, Islam. Islam's just a different breed, clearly. And I don't know. I just think this is going to be a classic Oliveira display, and hopefully they do Oliveira versus Islam too. But you do wonder: is Oliveira checked out? Is he getting ready to retire? Is he gonna go to 175 and move up weight like Max is moving up to 155, or is he just looking for money fights? He is a very flashy guy. I don't know. We shall see, but I think Oliveira is still in it.
Yeah, a lot of great points. Islam versus Oliveira 2 would be fascinating. That's assuming Islam gets through Arman in that rematch, which is slated for next year. So a lot of interesting stuff at 155. In this one, Tapology is with you, Meat Boy. They're overwhelmingly taking Du Bronx. 82% going with Charles Oliveira, and majority copper for that sub, so they do think that that's most likely. 18% go with Michael Chandler, and it's basically all brown for the YOLO KO. So you mentioned that when Oliveira has been losing recent fights, it's been two grapplers, so I think that, I mean, that would be pretty fascinating if Michael Chandler comes out here and decides to wrestle. I mean, maybe he sees that fight against Arman, maybe he sees that fight against Islam, sees how they had some success, and decides to vary his game a little bit. But if you're banking on Chandler to fight a strategic and high IQ fight, I mean, historically, like you said, Michael Chandler likes to fight to his opponent's style, and when his opponents bring that same YOLO energy, but in a little bit more measured way, like Dustin Poirier, like Justin Gaethje, he usually is able to lose those fights. So in this one, I think it's KO or bust. I don't see a world where Chandler goes out there and wrestles, and I don't see a world where Chandler gets a decision. However, Meat Boy, I do see a world where Chandler gets the KO finish, and that's where I'm at. I'm taking the 38-year-old fighter. I'm taking him to not give up his championship ambitions. And Charles Oliveira, I don't know, something to me seems a little bit off. And with Michael Chandler coming in as dialed as he is at 38, having been shelved for so long, and knowing this is basically his last opportunity, I'm taking him to capitalize on the moment, cut an epic promo, get the title fight against Islam, and then get absolutely smoked by Islam. So I'm taking Chandler by first round KO. Oliveira's getting slept. Do you see any world where that happens, or am I just buying the hype like I often do?
I think you're buying the hype because Michael Chandler is a very inspirational, persuasive guy. The energy, his charisma, he's very charismatic. Where I was sold, I was like, oh my god, he actually might fight Connor. But then, like, I went to bed, I woke up, and I'm like, what am I thinking? Of course, he's not gonna fight Connor. Like, the dude's an idiot. Sorry, he's not an idiot, but delusional. They both maybe could win a title, but they've both accepted the fact that they don't want to put the work in. They might not be skilled enough, and they have a small smidge of doubt to where they go, I just want to be an entertainer and maximize my fame and fortune. And how do you do that besides being the champ? Well, you create fight of the nights even if you lose. Everyone loves Drew Dober. Everyone loves Michael Chandler. They're never boring fights, and that's kind of their like pitch. That's kind of their brand. So it's absolutely going to be on brand when Oliveira knocks him out.
Yeah, great points. I think that the Drew Dober comp is very respectful towards Drew and perhaps very disrespectful towards Michael Chandler, but nonetheless, totally agree with the comparison. Two guys that anyone, anytime is down to watch fight because they never disappoint. Even if they're losing, they're putting on amazing showcases. So Michael Chandler, always a fun, again, fan favorite fighter, and I'm taking him to somehow get this one done. But like you said, I love the word that you used. He's super persuasive, right? This is a guy who it's conceive, believe, achieve times 1,000, and sometimes I'm the mark that eats up those narratives. So I'm taking Chandler first round KO. You're taking Oliveira early finish.
Yeah, there's just no way this fight goes past the first round. This is a classic Chandler. Chandler doesn't want to train hard enough to go 3 rounds. He's like, look, I'm either knocking this guy out first round or getting knocked out. I'm down. And Oliveira does not shy. He's always down to get knocked down, lay on his back, and say, come into my realm. Nobody wants it, and then he eventually stands up and then gets a knockout. So I honestly think this is going to be a classic Chandler on par with the brand, and a classic Oliveira on par with the brand.
Yeah, great points. Oliveira does love to get knocked down, but then he always gets up again. However, in this one, I don't think he's getting back up again, and I'm taking Michael Chumbawamba Chandler to get the early first round finish. But nonetheless, let us know in the comments if you are taking Michael Chandler, you buying the hype, you loving the story, or is Dew Bronx going to sleep him like Meat says? But swap us through though, Meat Boy. It's the last one. It's the Meat event. John Jones taking on Stipe Miocic in a fight where it's basically the fight for who's the heavyweight GOAT. I mean, it's tough to deny Stipe as the heavyweight GOAT already, and if somehow he takes out John Jones as a plus 600 dog, how are you going to argue for anyone else? But on the other side of that, John Jones is widely considered the GOAT, and if he makes light work of Stipe, who most consider to be the heavyweight GOAT, then John Jones is not only the GOAT, but is arguably the heavyweight GOAT as well. So there's essentially no close second as in terms of who's the dominant face of the Mount Rushmore MMA monument. It's John Jones. So in this one, are you at all surprised by the odds? That's kind of what I want to touch on early. I mean, overwhelmingly, the odds makers are loving John Jones. Minus 625 is already what he's swelled to, and will probably be closer to minus 800 come fight time. Plus 455, around plus 500 ish for Stipe. First thing that jumps out to you about the odds, do they make sense?
Yeah, the odds definitely are pretty disrespectful for Stipe, especially, everyone considering him as the heavyweight GOAT. Like, is that really heavyweight GOAT odds? I don't know. A heavyweight legend? Absolutely. I mean, and those odds kind of match up. You know, veteran was arguably one of the best heavyweights of all time. Um, I don't know. I think it's pretty accurate. You just never know though, because John Jones has one fight at heavyweight, and he fought Cyril Gane that has zero capability of grappling. Stipe's a pretty good grappler. Stipe's a pretty good striker. He's pretty well diverse all around, and he's a legit heavyweight, and he's been fighting heavyweight since day one. And he's fought the biggest heavyweights, smashed them all, and he's fought smaller heavyweights, smashed them all for the most part. I think this honestly should be closer to a pick 'em, but that's just, I guess, me giving Stipe a little too much respect. This is John Jones. You know, he is very slick like Sherlock Holmes, and he's probably going to win this via KO in the first round.
First round KO for John Bones Jones. He says he bailed on that nickname and is now officially Johnny Meat. And for this one, Meat Boy, if John Jones is getting the first round finish, is this a fight that you expect to look similar to that fight against Cyril Gane, where it's a YOLO easy light work takedown and he's able to either finish with a TKO or even a submission on the ground? Or do you anticipate Stipe? I mean, again, he's fought literally everyone in the division and has demonstrated a much stronger wrestling base, both pre-UFC and obviously in the UFC, than what Cyril Gane has been able to offer. So is it a fight where John Jones sleeps him on the feet and that's why you like the first round finish? Or is John Jones well-rounded and is even going to make Stipe look like Cyril Gane?
Yeah, it's such a tough one. Like honestly, it would really surprise me if he pulled a Cyril Gane on Stipe, to be honest. I think it's got to be standing up. I think it's got to be a KO. I think it's got to be like a Francis style type thing, maybe a head kick, something slick, maybe a Johnny Bones Jones classic, you know, uh, just a classic spinning elbow or something. I don't know. It's definitely got to be. I don't know. It would blow my mind, and Jones would be the go if he can submit, Stipe. That's just crazy. Um, But I'm very interested to see how that would play out. That's for sure.
Yeah, we've never seen Stipe lose by submission, and when he has been getting finished in 2 of his last 4 UFC fights, they were by strikes, right? I mean, DC finished him in the first round. Francis Ngannou finished him in the second in a fight that the UFC is trying to pretend like it never happened. But nonetheless, submission would be an interesting pathway for John Jones, and Tapology is overwhelmingly taking Bones, obviously, and a majority is going with submission. So they think that there could be something there, even if history has told a different story. This is John Jones, right? And John Jones is a guy who loves to beat you in the way you least expect. I mean, I learned so much in that John Jones versus Chael fight where Chael was the only dude ready to fight John Jones. Nobody wanted it. And John Jones goes in there and just ragdolls Chael, who at that point was literally like one of the best wrestlers in the promotion. And John seemingly just went out there and was trying to make a point that, hey, I am at a different level against all these guys across all disciplines. So submission could be probably the most YOLO route for John Jones, which likely means it's the most practical. So John Jones is obviously the pick in this one. It's tough for me to think that Stipe can go and get this one done at 42 years old, at having not fought since 2021 when he got slept by Francis. So John we've seen most recently, and I faded John, full transparency. I picked Cyril Gane to beat Jones in that one. Not going to make that mistake again. I'm taking John Jones. Don't love minus 650 though, and I don't blame anyone who's out there trying to throw $5 on Bear Jew and Stipe, because if $5 profits 150, that's pretty fascinating for two dudes who combined have like 25 UFC victories. So I'm taking John Jones. Are you officially going by sub?
Honestly, I don't think he's gonna get a sub on Stipe. I think he's gonna get a KO, TKO, ground and pound. If it's not on the feet, a head kick. I don't know. I could just absolutely see him, just being the better grappler in this sense. Maybe not good enough to submit Stipe, but good enough to keep him down there and just pummel him with heavy, downward elbows and all that. So I'm gonna pick early and often elbows, but I was just kind of thinking about it a little, and it might be an absolute snooze fest, and that's gonna make me sad because that's whack. Hopefully it's not a snooze fest. That'd be truly unfortunate, but also wouldn't surprise me. It's such a beautiful fight that sometimes the best fight matchups become absolute dusters. Like Francis versus Lewis. I hope that's not the case, but I don't know. Something in my gut just says this card's so stacked. There's just no way this whole card's gonna go beautifully on how we think it's gonna go, and this is the one where I think they all are gonna go on how we think it's gonna end, but this one it could be a decision. Just very slow, very. Both guys are scared, and then maybe decision. Maybe Jones gets on top and gets a TKO, but I don't know. That's kind of where I see it. Decision or TKO ground and pound.
Yeah, great stuff. A lot of different ways that this fight could go for sure. And you mentioned it as like a dream matchup, although perhaps it's one of those fights where this was a dream matchup in 2018, in 2019, and maybe similar to like a Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather. We're just getting both versions of these guys where ultimately the product turns out to be a snooze fest. Sure hope that's not the case, but can see where your head is at for sure with that line of thinking. John Jones, obviously the pick. I'm going to take Jones by finish. I don't know though. This could go either way. It could be a snoozer. Hoping it's a banger though, because at MSG, if John Jones can go out there and make light work of Stipe like he did against Cyril Gane, then I'm interested to see what's next. Whether it's against Pereira, whether it's against Tom Aspinall, I'm very excited for a John Jones fight if he goes out here and makes light work of who many consider to be the GOAT at heavyweight. So Jones is officially the pick for both of us. Great card overall though, Meat Boy. Broken down 8. What's your record going to be after UFC 309? Are you going 8-0, 6-2? Where are you at?
I'm feeling 6-2 on this one.
6-2 for Meat. I've been 1-3 the past 2 weeks, so nothing to celebrate. I think it gets back on track this week though. 6-2 for your boy as well. Quick curveball, Meat Boy, and